180 persons called Albigenses burned without the castle Minerve. In the year of our Lord 1210, a large sacrifice of believers, called Perfecti or Albigenses, took place near the castle Minerve, so that at one time about 180 persons, men as well as women, who, forsaking the Roman Antichrist, desired to adhere steadfastly to Jesus Christ and his divine truth, were publicly burnt. These, having commended their souls to God, are now waiting for the crown and reward of the faithful. As to the manner in which this occurred, different papistic writers give this account, that the Pope of Rome caused a second crusade or campaign to be preached, in order to annihilate with might and main the Albigenses wherever they might be concealed, promising forgiveness of sins, yea, eternal salvation, to all who in this campaign should well acquit themselves in murdering and burning the Waldenses. In the meantime, there were in the castle of Minerve many Albigenses called Perfecti, perfect ones, who resided under the lord of the castle, and were protected by him. The castle, situated on a high rock, was besieged by the legate of the Pope, and so hard pressed that the lord of the same was finally, through lack of water, compelled to surrender. The legate commanded that all who would not unite with the Roman Church should be put to death. Those within, however, namely the defenseless Albigenses, said, "We do not wish to forsake our faith. We reject your Roman faith. Your labor is vain, for neither death nor life shall cause us to depart from our faith." Such was the answer and resolution of the men who were all assembled together in one house. The women who were in another house were found by the abbot so courageous and undaunted that with all his fine words he could make no impression on them. The Count of Montfort then caused them all, namely these confessors, to come out of the castle, the men as well as the women, and having ordered a large fire to be kindled, he had them all cast into it, to the number of 140, all of whom were burnt alive, except 3 women who, having apostatized through weakness, escaped the fire. All the others that were in the castle, namely the lord with his servants and soldiers who had guarded the castle, complied with the will of the papal legate. Peter Sarnensis, speaking of these people that were put to death, says that these 140 martyrs were of the Albigenses called Perfecti, and adds that they would rather be burned alive than unite with the Roman Church. From the account of Robert of Auxerre, a strong papist, who wrote at that time, and it seems was an eyewitness of the steadfast death of these people, it appears that about 40 more than the preceding writers have stated were burned, which might well be the case, namely that the former first and the latter afterwards confessed themselves to be of the same faith, and thus were punished alike with death. He writes as follows: "In A.D. 1210 a great expedition was undertaken by our bishops as well as by the lords and princes of the realm, and by the common people. This expedition was a very noted one, and was undertaken from pure devotion or by vow, partly through the zeal of faith enkindled in the hearts of the believers," so he calls the papists, "against the destroyers of the faith," thus he calls the true Albigenses, and partly in order to merit the forgiveness of sins promised by the Apostolical See, the Pope of Rome. Hence they marched with their assembled army before the castle of Minerve, which was a very strong place. At last the besieged offered to surrender, but when it was proclaimed to all that those who would turn from their heresy should be left free and unmolested, about 180 were found, namely Albigenses, who rather suffered themselves to be burnt alive than desist from their heretical wickedness. Thus he calls their true faith. Those who witnessed this, he writes, were astonished at the inexorable obstinacy of these miserable people, who would not listen to any salutary admonitions. Thus he calls the fables of the papists, because their reason was smitten, and thus they voluntarily hastened to the punishment of death. A.D. 1210.